When I first heard my sister-in-law scream from the upstairs bedroom, I thought she was in pain. But by the time I reached her, she was holding a baby, my family's future, in her arms, smiling like she'd won something I didn't even know I was losing. That morning still lives inside me like a bruise that never quite fades. The house smelled faintly of sandalwood and something sweet burning on the stove. My mother-in-law had been boiling jaggery for tea, humming softly while sunlight poured across the marble floor of our ancestral home, the same home that had belonged to my husband's family for 3 generations. I used to love that house. The old oak staircase creaked under our feet, and the windows caught the evening sun in just the right way, painting golden patterns on the white walls. It wasn't perfect. There were leaks during the monsoon and the water heater had a mind of its own, but it felt like home, a house built with love, held together by stories. Or so I thought. My name is Mira, and I married Arjun 7 years ago. When we married, I wasn't marrying a man. I was marrying into a dynasty. His parents owned a textile business, his father was well respected, and the ancestral property, a sprawling colonial-style bungalow, was a symbol of their status. My husband was kind in the early days, steady, polite, the kind of man who never raised his voice. He often said, "This house will always be yours too, Mira. It's part of the family, and now so are you." Back then, I believed him. We lived with his parents and his younger brother, Rohan, who had recently married Nisha. Nisha was complicated. She was soft-spoken, elegant, the kind of woman who always seemed to know the right thing to say. But there was something about her that always felt too smooth, like silk hiding a blade underneath. Everyone adored her, especially my mother-in-law. "She's such a blessing," she would say, patting Nisha's hand over tea. "She brought light into this house again." I used to smile and nod, even when that light started to cast shadows over me. Life was quiet, even pleasant for the first few years. I taught part-time at a local school while Arjun handled the accounts for the family business. Evenings were filled with laughter and the smell of fried pakoras from the kitchen. Nisha and I would sit together after dinner, folding laundry or talking about everything and nothing. She often spoke about children, how she wanted one soon, how she imagined her child running down the hallways, filling the home with giggles. I wanted that too, but it wasn't happening. After 2 years of marriage, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. It wasn't impossible for me to conceive, the doctor said, but it would be difficult. Arjun was quiet on the drive home. He didn't hold my hand, didn't say much. When we pulled into the driveway, he whispered, "We'll figure something out." But there was a hesitation in his tone that settled like dust between us. It was Nisha who hugged me that night, tears in her eyes. "Oh, Mira," she said, pressing my hand, "maybe God has a plan we don't understand yet." I remember thinking how kind she was. Now I realize kindness can be the perfect disguise for curiosity, and curiosity, when fed, becomes something dangerous. Months passed. My in-laws started talking about lineage, about heirs and family names, about the importance of bloodlines. My father-in-law grew more vocal. "We have a house full of people, but not one grandchild. What are we waiting for?" I stayed quiet. So did Arjun. But I saw the guilt in his eyes every time the subject came up. And then came the day that changed everything. It was a Sunday morning. The house was filled with the usual chaos of breakfast. My mother-in-law was fussing over paradas, and Rohan was reading the newspaper aloud, his voice booming. Nisha sat silently at the table, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. When she announced her pregnancy, the whole house erupted. Everyone congratulated her. Everyone, except me. I smiled politely, clapping with the others, but my heart sank. It wasn't jealousy, not really. It was something colder, a quiet ache that whispered, "I'm being replaced." Still, I tried to be supportive. I helped her shop for baby clothes, folded tiny onesies, even repainted the nursery room with her. She often told me how lucky she felt to have a sister-in-law like me. Rohan doesn't even understand half of what I need, she'd laugh, but you do. I wanted to believe her. The months passed in a blur of doctor's visits and family excitement. Meanwhile, I felt myself fading into the background. Arjun became distant, buried in business work. He stopped joining me for morning walks. At night, he stayed up late, staring at his phone, replying to messages he'd hide whenever I entered the room. I told myself it was work. That's what wives are supposed to do. Trust. But trust, I've learned, can be a fragile thing. It doesn't shatter all at once. It cracks in small, silent places, until one day it simply collapses. The night before Nisha went into labor, there was a storm. Thunder rolled above the roof and the power flickered. I couldn't sleep. From the guest room, I heard muffled voices, Rohan's low tone, Nisha's sobs. I almost knocked on their door to ask if everything was all right, but something in my gut told me to stay still. Instead, I pressed my ear against the wall. I couldn't make out everything, but I caught one line, Nisha's voice, trembling. What if she finds out? Silence. Then Rohan's reply, she won't. Arjun promised. My heart skipped. Arjun? What promise? What were they hiding from me? The storm raged on outside, lightning splitting the night sky. Inside that house, another storm began, quiet, invisible, and far more destructive. When Nisha went into labor the next morning, the house turned into chaos. My mother-in-law screamed for towels, Rohan rushed to the car, and Arjun was nowhere to be found. Hours later, when I stood at the doorway of her room and saw her cradling that baby, smiling with tears on her face, something inside me shifted. The baby had Arjun's eyes. I didn't say a word. Not that day, not for many days after. Because sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of your heart preparing for war.
For the first few days after the baby's birth, I convinced myself that my eyes had betrayed me. I told myself that babies all looked similar when they were born, that the soft curve of a cheek or the shade of an iris didn't mean anything. But denial is a strange thing. It doesn't erase the truth, it just delays the moment you have to face it. The house was buzzing with celebration. Relatives poured in with sweets and gifts, and my mother-in-law glowed with pride. Our heir is finally here, she kept saying. Our bloodline continues. Every time she said our heir, something inside me clenched. I couldn't explain why it hurt so much. Maybe because I'd once imagined that word, heir, belonged to Arjun and me, to our story, to the family we might have had. But as days turned into weeks, little things began to disturb me. It started small. The first time was when I walked past the nursery door and heard Arjun's voice, soft, intimate. He was inside, leaning over the crib, gently holding the baby's hand. He whispered something I wasn't meant to hear. My little one, you'll have everything that's mine. The way he said it, tender, possessive, made my stomach twist. When he noticed me standing there, he startled like a guilty man. Oh, Meera, I was just talking to the baby. It's just affection. I nodded, forcing a smile. Of course. But that night, I couldn't sleep. His words replayed over and over in my mind like a haunting melody. A week later, I found Arjun and Rohan sitting in the study with stacks of papers spread out before them. They hushed the moment I walked in. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Just some business documents, Meera. You wouldn't be interested. I should have walked away, but my gaze caught on a familiar seal, the family's property title deed. My pulse quickened. Why are you going through those now? Rohan forced a smile. Just routine stuff, legal housekeeping after the baby. Don't worry about it, bhabhi. That word bhabhi used to sound affectionate from him now, it felt like mockery. I left the room, but my heart was pounding. The next few weeks were a blur of strange whispers and half truths. Arjun was spending more time away from home. Nisha, on the other hand, seemed to bloom, dressing in bright colors, wearing new jewelry, smiling like someone who knew a secret the rest of us didn't. I remember one afternoon vividly. She was sitting in the veranda, the baby in her hands, when I walked up to her with a bowl of fruit. She smiled, her tone syrupy.
For the first few days after the baby's birth, I convinced myself that my eyes had betrayed me. I told myself that babies all looked similar when they were born, that the soft curve of a cheek or the shade of an iris didn't mean anything. But denial is a strange thing. It doesn't erase the truth, it just delays the moment you have to face it. The house was buzzing with celebration. Relatives poured in with sweets and gifts, and my mother-in-law glowed with pride. Our heir is finally here, she kept saying. Our bloodline continues. Every time she said our heir, something inside me clenched. I couldn't explain why it hurt so much. Maybe because I'd once imagined that word, heir, belonged to me and Arjun, to our story, to the family we might have had. But as days turned into weeks, little things began to disturb me. It started small. The first time was when I walked past the nursery door and heard Arjun's voice, soft, intimate. He was inside, leaning over the crib, gently holding the baby's hand. He whispered something I wasn't meant to hear. "My little one, you'll have everything that's mine." The way he said it, tender, possessive, made my stomach twist. When he noticed me standing there, he startled like a guilty man. "Oh, Mira, I was just talking to the baby. It's just affection." I nodded, forcing a smile. Of course. But that night, I couldn't sleep. His words replayed over and over in my mind like a haunting melody. A week later, I found Arjun and Rohan sitting in the study with stacks of papers spread out before them. They hushed the moment I walked in. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Just some business documents," Arjun said too quickly. "You wouldn't be interested." I should have walked away, but my gaze caught on a familiar seal, the family's property title deed. My pulse quickened. "Why are you going through those now?" Rohan forced a smile. "Just routine stuff, legal housekeeping after the baby. Don't worry about it, Bobby." That word, Bobby, used to sound affectionate from him. Now it felt like mockery. I left the room, but my heart was pounding. The next few weeks were a blur of strange whispers and half-truths. Arjun was spending more time away from home. Nisha, on the other hand, seemed to bloom, dressing in bright colors, wearing new jewelry, smiling like someone who knew a secret the rest of us didn't. I remember one afternoon vividly. She was sitting in the veranda, the baby in her arms, when I walked up to her with a bowl of fruit. She smiled, her tone syrupy sweet. "You don't have to wait on me like this. You've done enough." "Done enough?" I repeated. She looked down at the baby and said softly, "You'll understand soon." The way she said it, it wasn't gratitude. It was foreshadowing. I tried to talk to Arjun that night. "Something's changed. Between you, Rohan, and Nisha, I can feel it." He didn't meet my eyes. "You're imagining things again, Mira. You've been tense lately." Tense? I laughed bitterly. Because my husband hides things from me in his own home? Because I hear my name whispered in rooms I'm not invited into? He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're overreacting." And that's how gaslighting feels. Not like an explosion, but like slow erosion. Each denial wears down your certainty until you start doubting your own memory. That night, he turned off the lamp and rolled away from me in bed. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, listening to the sound of his breathing, steady, calm, deceitful. Days later, I stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to see. I was looking for an old photo album in the storage cabinet when I found a plain white envelope tucked between files. My name wasn't on it. Neither was Arjun's. It was addressed to Nisha. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were photocopies of legal documents, property transfer papers. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable, Arjun Sharma, and next to it, written in neat ink, transfer of ownership, ancestral property, effective upon witness approval. Witness, Rohan Sharma. The world tilted for a second. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theft, planned, documented, executed right under my nose. I confronted Arjun that evening when he came home. He looked tired, his shirt collar open, eyes dull from whatever guilt or exhaustion he was hiding. "Why did you sign the deed transfer?" I asked quietly. He froze mid-step. "What? Don't lie. I saw the papers." He exhaled, long and slow. "You shouldn't have gone through my things." "That's all you have to say?" My voice cracked. "That I shouldn't have found out?" He sat down heavily, rubbing his hands together. "It's not what you think, Mira." "Then tell me what it is." "It's temporary. Rohan and I just needed to move some assets for the business." "Don't insult me," I snapped. "You transferred the house, Arjun. Our house." Silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "It's for the family's future, for the child." I stared at him. The child? He didn't look at me. And in that stillness, I knew he wasn't talking about our child. He was talking about hers. That night, I sat alone in the dark, the faint hum of the ceiling fan filling the silence. The baby cried in the next room, and Nisha's soothing voice floated through the hall. I pressed my palms against my ears, but I could still hear her laughter, soft, triumphant. It hit me then. She hadn't just given birth to a child. She had given birth to her leverage, and Arjun had given her everything else. I didn't cry that night. I just sat there, staring at the empty corner of our room where the framed wedding photo used to hang. At some point, Arjun must have taken it down. I hadn't even noticed when. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. The air smelled different, the walls seemed colder, but even then, beneath the numbness, a quiet resolve began to form. I wasn't going to beg, I wasn't going to scream. If they thought they could write me out of the story, they were about to learn that I was still holding the pen. The morning I discovered the truth, the house was unnaturally quiet. No servants bustling in the kitchen, no laughter from the veranda, just the low hum of the ceiling fan and the echo of my own heartbeat. I'd barely slept. All night I had replayed Arjun's words in my head. "It's for the child." Every syllable had been a blade. By sunrise, I was hollowed out, too exhausted to even cry. I thought maybe I was imagining things again, maybe this was another cruel trick of my mind, but deep down, I knew. There was something rotten beneath this house's silence. So I decided to find it. I waited until Arjun left for the office. Nisha was upstairs, asleep with the baby. I went to his study, the one room in the house that was always off limits to me. The door was locked, of course, but keys are never far from secrets. I found them under a stack of files in the living room drawer. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and cologne. The shelves were lined with legal books, awards, and the faint scent of betrayal. I sat at his desk, opened the drawer, and there it was, a small, black notebook. I flipped it open, expecting work notes or client names, but instead I saw something else entirely, a list. Dates, numbers, and initials. N.S. Every page recorded transactions: jewelry sold, land moved, investments withdrawn, all linked to NS. Nisha Sharma. My hands trembled. I turned another page and froze. Taped there was a photograph. It was Arjun, holding Nisha's hand in the hospital room. She was in a hospital gown, exhausted but smiling. He wasn't just standing beside her, he was beaming, the way he used to look at me years ago. Scrawled beneath the photo in his handwriting were 4 words that shattered me. Our family begins today. The floor felt like it tilted beneath me. My knees went weak. My breath came out shallow. This wasn't an affair born out of lust or a fleeting mistake. This was something deliberate, planned, nurtured. He had built a parallel life, one that started the moment I stopped being convenient. And yet, I couldn't scream. I couldn't even tear the picture. I just sat there, staring at it, my heart breaking in complete silence. I didn't know how long I'd been sitting there until a sound made me look up. The door creaked. Nisha was standing in the doorway, her baby on her hip. Her face was calm, unreadable. "Looking for something?" she asked. I didn't answer. She stepped inside, her bangles jingling softly. "You weren't supposed to find that. Not yet." Yet, my voice cracked. "So it's true?" She smiled faintly, chillingly polite. "You make it sound like a crime, Mira. It's destiny. You and Arjun were never meant to last. He only stayed because of duty. Because you were—" "His wife," I interrupted sharply. "His burden," she corrected, her tone cruel. "Don't fool yourself. He's been mine for a long time." I took a step toward her. "You planned all this. The child, the house, everything." "Of course I did." She tilted her head. "Why wouldn't I? I gave this family an heir, something you never could." The words hit harder than any slap. For years, I had buried the quiet shame of infertility, the endless doctor visits, the prayers, the nights spent crying into my pillow while Arjun's distance grew. I had told myself love was enough, but in that moment, Nisha tore that illusion to shreds. My voice came out soft, almost a whisper. "You destroyed my home." She smirked. "No, Mira, I replaced it." And with that, she turned to leave, as if my pain was nothing more than an inconvenience. But as she reached the door, I said something that made her stop. "You might have his name, but you don't know his soul, and that's where your mistake begins." She turned slowly, her expression hardening. "What are you planning to do?" I smiled faintly. "Watch." That night, I didn't cry. I planned. I copied every document, every transaction record, every photograph. I took them all and locked them in my drawer, my silent ammunition. For the first time in months, I felt awake, alive, dangerous. Arjun came home late, smelling faintly of whiskey and guilt. He looked at me, searching my face for warmth. He found none. "Mira," he said quietly, "I never wanted to hurt you." I looked at him, this man I'd once loved enough to build a life around, and all I saw was cowardice. "You didn't hurt me. You freed me." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You'll see." The next morning, the lawyer came. Arjun thought it was for business paperwork. He didn't know I'd already called him. When the lawyer asked him to sign the acknowledgement for the property reassessment, he didn't even read it. He just signed, like he always did when he assumed I was harmless. But this time, that signature gave me power. Because in those same papers, I had quietly reinstated joint ownership, equal rights, filed legally, backed by evidence of deceit and fraud. When I handed him the copy that evening, his face drained of color. What is this? He stammered. Justice, I said simply. For every night you lied, every day you played family while selling your soul to convenience. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. You and Nisha wanted this house, keep it. But know this, everything you built on betrayal will crumble. I just made sure of it. I walked out before he could reply. Outside, the air felt lighter. The sun was setting, washing the sky in shades of gold and crimson, colors of endings and new beginnings. As I walked down the driveway with my suitcase in hand, I glanced back one last time. Through the open window, I saw Nisha holding the baby, panic flickering in her eyes as Arjun shouted at her. Their empire of lies was already collapsing. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled. Because revenge wasn't loud, it wasn't violent. It was quiet, precise, poetic. A week after I walked away, the house that once held my whole world stood like a shadow in the distance. I had rented a small apartment across town, 2 rooms, modest, quiet. For the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts without the weight of someone else's anger pressing down on me. But peace is never instant. It arrives slowly, like dawn creeping through old curtains. Every morning, I made tea in my chipped cup, sat by the window, and wondered what they were doing back at that house. Was Arjun still pretending everything was fine? Was Nisha flaunting her victory to the neighbors? Did the servants still whisper when they passed her in the hallway, sensing something was wrong but too afraid to ask? I didn't have to wonder for long. It started with a call from my lawyer. "Mira, you might want to see this," he said. His voice was calm, almost satisfied. "They're fighting, publicly. The property dispute has reached the registrar's office, and the documents you filed, they've stirred the pot." I thanked him, hung up, and went online. By evening, it was all over social media. The whispers had grown teeth. Businessman Arjun Sharma in legal trouble over disputed property. Anonymous sources claim his wife and sister-in-law are both listed in ownership papers. The vultures of gossip were circling. 2 days later, I got another call. This time, it was my mother-in-law. Her voice, usually full of control and grace, was trembling. "Mira, what have you done?" I said quietly, only what was right. "You embarrassed this family," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what people are saying?" I took a slow breath. "I didn't embarrass the family, Ma. Arjun and Nisha did that. I just turned on the light." There was silence, then a broken whisper. "He's lost everything. The partners pulled out, clients are leaving, the bank froze the joint account." I closed my eyes. The ache that rose inside me wasn't satisfaction, it was grief. The kind that comes when justice feels heavier than revenge. "I didn't want to ruin him," I said softly. "I just wanted my truth to matter." The next day, I saw him. It was evening, and I was walking back from the market when a car pulled up beside me. The door opened, and there he was, Arjun, in the same gray suit, but the shine was gone. His hair was unkempt, his eyes red from sleepless nights. "Mira," he said, his voice barely holding together, "please, just listen." I stopped, but didn't move closer. He took a shaky breath. "You destroyed me." I tilted my head. "No, Arjun,
You destroyed yourself. I just stopped pretending not to see it. He looked at me, desperate, guilty, angry, all at once. She tricked me, he said. Nisha, she said it was just paperwork, that she'd transfer it later. I didn't know she was lying. I almost laughed. You knew. You just didn't care until it cost you something. He ran a hand through his hair. I lost everything, Mira. The house, the firm, even my mother won't speak to me. Please, help me fix this. For a moment, I almost pitied him. The man who once ruled every room now looked like a boy who'd lost his way home. But I couldn't forget the nights I begged for honesty and got silence instead. So I said quietly, "You'll have to learn to live with your choices, Arjun. I already have." He reached out, as if to touch my hand, but I stepped back. Go home, if that's still what you have. A week later, I heard that Nisha had left the house too. Apparently, when the bank froze the assets, she realized the deed transfer wasn't worth much without liquidity. She had tried to sell a portion of the land, but since the ownership was legally shared, no one would buy. In the end, she packed up and moved back to her parents' home with the baby, the heir to a fortune that now existed only in paperwork and dust. Arjun stayed behind, surrounded by empty rooms and unpaid bills. The same walls he had once called ours now echoed with the sound of his own regret. Months passed. The gossip died down, as gossip always does, but people remembered. When I'd walk through the market, some women would nod respectfully, others whispered words like strong or brave. I didn't feel brave, I felt rebuilt. I started teaching again, literature at a local college. I found purpose in stories that mirrored my own. Women who had been wronged, who found their voices, who didn't let heartbreak define them. Sometimes I'd still see Arjun in town, once at the bank, another time outside the temple. He'd always look at me the same way, a mixture of shame and longing, but he never approached. And that was enough closure for me. One evening, months later, as monsoon rain drummed against my window, I received a letter. It was from Nisha. The envelope was thin, her handwriting rushed. I hesitated, then opened it. Mira, you were right. I thought I could build a life out of someone else's pain, but all I did was inherit his emptiness. The house feels cursed now, like every wall remembers your footsteps, not mine. The baby is sick. I can't afford the treatment. Arjun has nothing left. I thought about asking for your help, but then I remembered I don't deserve it. I'm sorry. Nisha. I read it twice, then folded it gently and placed it inside my drawer. I didn't write back. Some stories don't need answers, only endings. A month later, I visited the old house one last time. It was up for auction now, stripped of furniture and pride. I walked through the empty halls, tracing my hand along the walls that once held laughter, tears, and deceit. When I reached the veranda, I paused. The sun was setting, the same golden wash that had followed me the day I left. I whispered to the air, "You took my heart once. Now I take it back." And for the first time, the silence of that house felt peaceful.
I moved on quietly, like dawn breaking after a long night. There were no grand announcements, no dramatic declarations of victory, only stillness and a slow return to myself. When I left that house, I thought I had lost everything, but in truth, I was just shedding what no longer belonged to me.
illusions, dependencies, old loyalties that had long stopped giving warmth. What remained was something I hadn't felt in years: peace. My days began simply. Morning sunlight spilled through my curtains. I made chai in a brass kettle that once belonged to my mother. I started growing jasmine on the small balcony outside my flat, a reminder that even something fragile could bloom again with care. The world outside kept spinning, the same noises, the same gossip, but inside I was learning how to be still. In my classroom, I taught stories about resilience, women in literature who had rebuilt themselves after betrayal. And sometimes, while reading aloud, my voice would shake slightly because I realized I wasn't just teaching, I was healing through every word. One evening after class, a young student named Aisha approached me. She was shy, barely 20, with tear-swollen eyes. "Ma'am," she said softly, "how do you forgive someone who ruined your life?" I looked at her, and for a moment I saw myself, the version of me who once clung to rage like it was armor. I took a deep breath before answering. "You don't start with forgiveness," I said gently. "You start with distance. Then you heal. And once you've healed, you realize forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you." She nodded, her lips trembling into a fragile smile. In her gratitude, I saw the circle closing, pain transforming into purpose. Months later, I received a call from the auction house. They informed me that the old family home had been sold, but to my surprise, not to an outsider. A local women's foundation had purchased it, planning to turn it into a shelter for single mothers and widows. When I heard that, something in my chest loosened, as if the house itself was finally being freed from its ghosts. They invited me to the opening ceremony. At first, I wasn't sure I could go back, but something inside urged me to see it, not as a symbol of loss, but of transformation. The day I visited, the place looked unrecognizable. Fresh paint, open windows, children's laughter in the courtyard where arguments once echoed. They had kept the old mango tree, though, the one I used to sit beneath during long evenings. Its branches were full again, swaying in the breeze as if it too had survived everything. One of the coordinators, a woman named Leela, recognized me. "You're the previous owner, aren't you?" I smiled. "I used to live here, yes, but the house belongs to better hands now." She placed her hand over her heart. "We're giving it a new story." Her words sank deep. A new story. That's what I had been doing too, quietly, one day at a time. Later, as the ceremony ended, I lingered under the mango tree, the sunlight slipping through its leaves like gold dust. I thought about Nisha, wherever she was, holding her child, perhaps realizing that greed doesn't build a home. And Arjun, who once believed love was a possession, not a partnership. I didn't hate them anymore. Their betrayal had broken me, yes, but it had also carved space for something stronger: self-respect, clarity, peace. Maybe that's how life balances itself, through heartbreak and healing, through endings that become beginnings. A few weeks later, I published my first essay, titled "The House That Taught Me Freedom." It was part memoir, part reflection, and it spread faster than I expected. Emails came in from women across the country, mothers, sisters, daughters, all sharing their own stories of loss and courage. One line seemed to resonate most with readers. "Sometimes the home you lose is the one that sets you free." It became the line I was known for, and every time someone quoted it, I smiled, not because it made me proud, but because it reminded me how far I'd come. A year passed. One Sunday morning, while watering my jasmine plants, I noticed something small and white beneath the soil, a sprouting bud, delicate but determined. I knelt, brushing the dirt away, and whispered, "You made it." It felt like a message from the universe, proof that even after storms, something beautiful always finds its way through. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the sunlight play across my plants. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to look back. My story had found its ending, and it wasn't about revenge or restitution. It was about rediscovery, of strength, of purpose, of peace. That night, I wrote the last line of my journal. They took my house, but they couldn't take my home, because I carry it within me now. I closed the book, exhaled slowly, and let the quiet fill the room. For the first time in years, I felt whole.
When I think back to that chapter of my life, I no longer feel bitterness, just gratitude. Quiet, steady gratitude for the lessons I learned the hardest way possible. You see, betrayal doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it comes wrapped in a smile, disguised as family, sealed with trust. And when it breaks you, it does so silently, piece by piece, until you forget who you are. But healing is louder. It starts when you finally say, enough, when you choose yourself, even if that means standing alone. There was a time when I believed home was made of walls and memories, that love was something to hold, even if it hurt. But I know better now. A home isn't built with bricks. It's built with peace, with dignity, with truth. And love should never cost you your self-respect. I lost everything once. The house, the marriage, the future I thought I wanted. But in losing it, I found myself. And that, I've realized, is the truest form of inheritance any woman can claim. Sometimes I still walk by that old house, now full of women who, like me, are learning to rebuild. Their laughter fills the space that once held my tears. And I smile, because that house, once a monument to deceit, has become a sanctuary of strength. Life has a way of restoring balance, doesn't it? Maybe not through revenge, but through redemption, through quiet justice, the kind that doesn't humiliate, but heals. So if you're listening to my story tonight, and you've ever felt betrayed, if you've ever watched someone you trusted turn your love into a weapon, remember this. You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to take back your peace. No matter who took what from you, your home, your confidence, your hope, you can rebuild. And one day, when you least expect it, the pain that once destroyed you will become the story that saves someone else. Would you have done what I did? Would you have walked away or fought to stay? Tell me what your heart says in the comments below. And if this story touched you, stay a while. There are many more voices like mine waiting to be heard.